Got it?
Mm.
In the opening sequences of the first shows schoolgirls come running down this path, and then they turn here and run down these steps to Sid's Cafe, which is right around the corner on the left. We'll take more pictures down.
So where are you?
We are in Sid's Cafe in Holmford. That sounds like they're working here. Ivy's in the kitchen. Take a good look around, not just me.
My name's Colin. I'm going to take you around, show you where they did some of the filming of Last at Summer Wine. I was also be telling you a little bit of history of the place as you're going round. I should be telling you about the floods that we've had. Over the last few hundred years, we've had some really bad floods in Holmford. The worst one was in 1852, when the reservoir up in the moors burst and flooded the valley, killed a total of 81 people. And then in 1944 we had the cloudburst, which killed 3. Now if you look over to the right, across the road on the paraded shops, on the end shop, can you see the blue and yellow sign on the butcher's window? Actually on the glass.
Yeah.
To the left of that sign is a stone plaque built into the wall. And that shows the height of the floodwaters when the reservoir burst. Straight across the road in front of us, just behind that bus, is the Kirkwood Hospice shop, which is painted white. Now that used to be a laundrette at one time. And that's where I come from. Them used to sit in the very early series. If you remember, they were always in and out of laundrette. I sat looking out at the window. The road that went along in front of us leads on to Nora Matters. Used to be the main road through the town at one time. It was a toll road. And it actually went behind these shops on the left, back at Horse and Cart Road. All along the right hand side of the road where the cars are parked, there were shops and houses. They all got washed away in the 44 floods. This little lane on the left was one of the first opening scenes of Summer Wine. Showed the 3 of them walking down. Nora Matters on the row of cottages in front of us, just to the right. It's the one with the border. Now when they came filming here, they had to take all the signs down. They actually filmed on the platform. You don't normally see that first lot of steps. You see on the right is the studio of Ashley Jackson, famous Yorkshire artist. There's a TV programme called The Brush with Ashley. He lives in Holmford. Looking up to the right, amongst the trees at the top, you can see the tower of the church. That's where the Lloyd's buried, Compton. And also Peter Sellers, who played Frank.
That's not too far.
Filming Last of the Summer Wine originated in 1972. When the BBC commissioned a one-off play for TV's Comedy Playhouse, which was shown in January 1973. That play was so successful that they turned it into the series Last of the Summer Wine. The series ran until August 2010. After 37 years of filming, it makes it the longest running comedy series in the world. It was
was the broadcaster Barry Tuck who persuaded the production team to do the filming in Beaufort, as he had recently done a TV programme about the Bamford Sausage Seaside postcards that were produced here in Beaufort and the working men's clubs in the north of England, and he saw how beautiful it was around Beaufort. Wesley's garage had Edith's sister Rosa's cottage. She always wears pink in the programme. I'm afraid we won't be seeing Wesley's garage, as it was taken away after the death of Gordon Wombat, who played Wesley, but I will show you where it was. If you look at the houses in this village, they look quite normal on one side, but on the other side there can be anything up to 5 stories high, due to them being built on a steep hillside. Now when the reservoir burst, there were many deaths in this village, due to the valley being very narrow at this point.
On the slope, if you look up to the right, down the house on the right, you'll see steps going up to the doors. We've got railings round. The second loft along is where the film Rosa's cottage. That's Edith's sister Ros. Just here on the right, where the for sale board is. And looking over to the left, it's just beyond those trees where Wesley's garage was. Edith's cottage is just across the river. It's the one with the little porch in the middle of the road. Done before that, this one with a glass barn door that's open. No, it did don't, make sure. Just there on the left.
When the BBC came filming, there would have been about 50 crew and up to 35 vehicles, so they had to organise things properly, or else there would have been chaos on the narrow roads and in the villages. What they did, they had a base camp at strategic points where they would put the large vehicles, then shuttle the actors to the set in minibuses. Looking down to the left, you can see some of the 5-storey buildings, and you can imagine that torrent of water hurtling down the valley when the reservoir burst. The fields at either side of us were used for doing some of the stunt work. They did that scene here where Compo and the boys were skiing downhill. They had breakfast trays tied to their feet. They once did a scene where Howard was on the roof of his house, trying to escape from Pearl, no doubt, when Clegg and pals came across the ladder and moved it, leaving Howard stranded on the roof. Well, Howard's house is 4 miles away from here. The roof where they actually filmed it is the one to the left in front of us, the low one of the two cottages. When you see Howard's house, you'll realise why they filmed it here. When the BBC came filming, they usually started about May or June and filmed through the summer. They spent approximately a month each time in the area. Then they would go back to the studios for a month, come back here again, do another month's filming. Then they would go back to the studios and edit it all together. They would show the Christmas special in January, then follow it up in the new year with a new series. When they filmed in the cafe, the counter that's in use today was all boarded up, and they brought Ivy's counter forward from the left-hand side. They took all the tables out by 3 and used a wide-angle lens on the camera. It does look a bit bigger on TV. Where you saw Ivy putting her head through the hatch and shouting, that was filmed in the studio, because behind that hatch in the cafe is a brick wall. Colin the driver, who is the proprietor of Smowine Magic Tour, owned and ran Sid's Cafe for the best part of 20 years and often got involved with the filming at the cafe, actually appearing in one episode with the late, great Sonoma Wisdom. And looking up to the right on that hillside, that's where you would have found the 3 of them laid in the heather sunbathing. And it's up there where the little quarry is that you often saw them walking around. Just coming up here on the left is one of the many lanes that they used in this area for filming. But this one in particular you would see in the 11th episode, with the 3 of them walking down there. That's where you got Howard and Marina over the wall having a cuddle. Sea level. We're only 1,800 foot below the flight path for Manchester Airport. That explains the tyre marks on the roof.
Now looking over to the left in the distance, you can see a tower on a hill. That's called Castle Hill. It overlooks Huddersfield. The tower is a 100-foot high stone tower. It was built to commemorate Queen Victoria's death and Jubilee. There's only been a castle or a keep on that hill going right back to the Iron Age, 2,000 years BC.
Looking over to the right across the valley, about halfway up the hillside, you can see some stone-built houses on a housing estate. That's where Barry and Glenda lived in the programme. On this road they would do the scenes with the motor vehicles. This is where you might have got Wesley in his Land Rover, or Reed in a car, crunching the gears and blaming they found the two bobbies sat in their police car.
Now if you look through this gate on the right, this first house with the glass porch is Foggy's.
On this road they do the scenes with Howard and Marina on the push bikes. You may recall one episode where they joined a cycling club for a bit of cover from Perth. Well, all the cyclists came down this little track on the left and crashed in a heap of road here. In a more recent episode it showed Howard and Marina coming out at fields on the push bikes down this track here. About this point they came across a double-decker bus and the road alongside it, but unbeknown to them, Pearl was on the top deck watching them.
Looking over to the right across the valley at about the 1 o'clock position, about level with us, there's a single-storey building with a white sign on it. That's the rugby club that they used in the programme Where the Heart Is. That was filmed round here. One of the actresses in that programme, Leslie Dunlop, she liked it so much round here, she got a house for to live in.
In the last series of Summer Wine, in one episode, the two bobbers blew the police car up. What happened was they got a chip fryer in the car. They fancied a bag of chips while they were on duty. They plugged the machine into the car's dashboard and it blew the car up. This is where it was filmed, by this bench. And of course this is a bench that you often saw Compo and them sat on, looking over the valley.
Well done, very quiet.
This large mill in the bottom is called Washpit Mills. Used to be one of the main employers in this area until the decline of the textile industry. It was a woolen mill. There were quite a few small mills in this valley at one time, but most of them have shut down, being turned into houses or apartments. The valley was chosen for the textile industry for its humidity and its close proximity to water. They needed the humidity to stop the fibres from going brittle and breaking. The small mill on the right is called Rowan Yarns, quite famous for its high quality hand knitting loops.
Now turn into luxury apartments.
look over this wall to the left, down in the bottom, you can see some of the old mills that's been converted to houses. Said how much he liked Old Firth and how he'd like to live in. Well, he got his dying wish by being buried in. But Bill was actually born and brought up in London, and he still lived in London up to his death. Though a lot of people thought he was a Yorkshireman, they thought he lived in Old Firth. He didn't. What he did when they were here filming, he used to rent a house. That house is just on the hillside in front of us, just behind the tall chimney. Now, although Bill was classed as the star of the show, he very nearly didn't get the job. Because in the early days, when they were casting for it, Roy Clark didn't think he'd built a mast to the Yorkshire dialect. He soon proved him wrong.
See on the left, you'll see a little wooden chalet type house. That's where Billy used to stay when he was here filming.
Episode that featured the comedians Cannon and Ball, Bobby Ball was all tied up. He was playing at being Houdini. His wife got fed up of his silly antics and she kicked him out of the house and locked him in the garden shed. It was this house here on the left, the end one. His father an insurance man. His grandfather was the village barber. His daughter, Antonia, she works on the Summer Wine production team. Looking over to the left on the horizon, you can see a large tower. That's Emley Moor television transmitter. Built of concrete, it was built in the 1970s to replace a metal one that collapsed. The metal one collapsed due to the weight of ice on its support cables. When they built this new one, it went into the record books for being the tallest freestanding structure in Europe, just under 1,100 foot high, more than twice the height of Blackpool Tower, and it is a listed building.
We've all brought your passports with you. Look at the garden wall to the left.
If you go up the Sydney Tower, they've got pictures of different towers around the world. It's an emblem of ours. It's right down there on the side. Right? Spelt in wrong as well. I think it were borders. Yeah.
This is a little school on the right, at Roy Castle in London.
Quite a lot of filming in this little garden on the right. Those bushes at the back is where you'd find the three of them appearing from. It's where you'd find Howard and Marina disappearing too. Where those steps are on the right is where you would find Entwistle parked in his little red truck. Waiting to catch a bus. More often than not, those scenes would have been filmed on this road. They would hire a normal service bus and bring their own bus stop. Looking over to the left on that hillside, they did a lot of filming up there. They did that scene where Barry got carried away on a giant kite. And the one where the hot air balloon, shaped like a big fat lady, came up from behind the brow of the hill. And in one episode, Auntie Wainwright bought some coffins at an auction, and the boys made a trolley out of one of them, but at some point of the day it ran away from them. Well, if you look on that hill to the left, about halfway up it, just above the trees, you can see a lane going across at an angle. That's where Howard and Marina were walking when the runaway coffin came flying down the hill and nearly ran them over. Just beyond the brow of that hill lives the international show jumper, John Whittaker. Looking to the left, down in the bottom, you can see a pretty little church. This is a church where Barry and Glenda got married in the episode Uncle of the Bride. It's also featured in the Millennium Special episode called Last Post and Pigeon, when Dora Bryan first came into the series. In that episode it showed Ida sat in a wheelchair, putting flowers on her mother's grave. It was the first time that they'd actually filmed her in the wheelchair, but they had been bringing her on set in one quite often, as she was quite bad on her legs. At the latter end, whenever you saw walking or driving a car, it was actually a body double driving, because in the later episodes she only did close-up scenes in the studios. If you thought she was really driving, she was actually sat in a car on the back of a trailer being towed by a Land Rover.
this is where Barry and Glenda were married.
They did quite a lot of filming in this village. There's lots of narrow roads and lanes that they used. But it was in the 1600s, most of the villages were wiped out with the plague, which came up from London in a bundle of flea-infested clothing. But this is a village where the lad comes from that's been murdered in Australia. If you remember the young English couple who were touring the outback in a camper van, they got kidnapped. The girl managed to escape, but they think the lad's being shot. They never found his body. This estate on the right is where he comes from. Peter Falconio.
Now coming into the village of Jackson Bridge. This is where the summer wine pub is, the White Horse, Howard and Pearl's Cottage and Clegs. Put down in the bottom, the White Horse. We shall get a better view of it shortly. But the cottages of Howard and Pearl and Clegg are behind the pub up at the top. Clegg's is the one with the cream-coloured door in the middle of the row. Howard and Pearl's to the right of it. You will notice there are 3-storey weavers' cottages. You don't normally see the top floor in the programme. We're ready to show that. And you can see now why, when they filmed Howard sat on the roof, they chose that smaller cottage. Well, Weaver's cottages, they have lots of narrow windows close together. It was to let maximum light in when they were doing the handloom weaving upstairs. But when Clark comes out of his door and turns left, he walks on that lane, he ends up in Nora Batters. 4 miles away. It's a summer wine magic. So as I turn this next corner, if you look down to the left, you get a good view of the front of the pub and the cottages. When you see the pub on telly, you don't realise there's a road in front of it. When they used to film Compromise, sat outside at the table. They actually filmed them across the road in the car park. They made it look like one big yard in front. On the left is the lane at the front of the cottages, That's where you find Pearl chasing Howard down there. The actress who played Pearl, Julia Kaplan, she played a bit of a dragon, but in real life she was quite nice. She was quite attractive. She had a wicked sense of humour.
As you go round this next corner, past the block of apartments, if you look up to the left, just after the apartments, you'll see a row of cottages. The third house along that row is where Roy Castle was put. It's the second lot of railings along.
Just here on the left.
As I said earlier, when they came filming, they would spend approximately a month each time in the area. The actors would stay in one of the hotels in Huddersfield, and the crew would stay locally, some in boarding houses and some would rent cottages. They would mix quite well with the locals. When you think about it, some of them have been coming here for a long number of years. They worked 6 days a week when they were here filming, Saturday being their only day off. And quite often on a Saturday afternoon, you'd have seen below him walking through Home Firth, doing his shopping. The amusing thing about that was, you could get hundreds of people walk past him and nobody recognised him, because in real life he was quite a dapper little gentleman. Now some of the crew would start work about 6 o'clock in the morning, getting things ready. Cameras roll at 9 and they could go through until 7 or 8 at night, most days. There was a lot of hard work put into it. Here on the right is the garden centre where Tom Owen had his allotment with the garden shed on that he lived in with his pet dog Waldolf. And this is where the repo man was always chasing after him for money. This is the village where the actress Leslie Dunlop come to live. She played the nurse in Where the Heart Is. She's now in Emmerdale. She plays Brenda in The Cafe. Her house is just out to the right, the one with the white door in the middle of the block.
Just here on the right.
I briefly mentioned Bamforth postcards earlier on. Bamforth postcards are the comic postcards they get at the seaside. They've been made in Home Firth for more than 100 years, up until quite recently. It was in the late 1800s that James Bamforth developed the magic lantern, and from that he became one of the leading pioneers of silent movie making, long before the days of Charlie Chaplin. And it was only the start of the First World War that put an end to filming in Home Firth, and that's when the Americans came along and developed the idea further. However, James Bamforth produced the world's first edited film. In 1899, at just 60 seconds long, it was called The Kiss in the Tunnel. It featured a young couple sharing a lingering embrace as the train rumbled through a tunnel. It was filmed in a local railway. So if you see, if it hadn't been for the First World War, this valley might have been Britain's answer to Hollywood. Who knows? village of Wooldale. It has nothing to do with sheep. It gets its name from the valley down to the right. Many years ago, when it was all covered in forest, it was called the Valley of the Wolves, and the village was actually called Wolfdale. But over the years, with the local dialect, it has gradually changed to Wooldale. Now, there was a small pub in this village called the Bay Horse, where the Luddites used to meet in secret during the Industrial Revolution. They used to meet here to plan the attacks on the mills in the area and smash the machinery up. Along this road on the left, just past the co-op, you can see the cottage. That was the Bay Horse. And you can still see the pub signs on the corner of the building. You can still make the name out on the sign.
Just here on the left.
You may be wondering where Auntie Wainwright's shop is. Well, Auntie Wainwright's is 8 miles away in a village called Marsden. Now, you may be lucky enough to find Marsden, but you will be lucky to find Auntie's shop, because it is actually somebody's house, no longer a shop. So when they went filming there, they had to dress it up and put a false front on. It usually took them about 3 days to set it all up. They had to have a security guard on overnight, guarding Auntie Wainwright's junk outside. Marsden is where the health centre is that was used for the filming of Where the Heart Is. Bet you thought it was always sunny in Old Firth. Well, I can assure you, when they came filming, it nearly always rained. But it didn't stop them, because rain doesn't show up on camera unless it's absolutely throwing it down. So with those big arc lights that they brought with them, it did look sunny. Next time you watch it, just look on the floor and see how many puddles you can see. You'll be surprised. Bottom of this road, on the left, there is a large building which is being renovated at the moment. That was the Bamford Postcards factory. But just this side of it is a smaller building which is actually the studios, and it's where James Bamford used to paint the comic postcards and make the silent movies. Well, this one to the right is the co-op, where Marina used to work behind the till, passing love messages to Howard. At the far end of the co-op car park in the bottom is a small Methodist chapel. That's the building they use for the library in the programme.
As I've come back into Hillsborough, on the right hand side is the cinema, which was built in 1912, especially for James Bamford, to show his silent movies. That would have been one of the first cinemas. Well, I hope you've enjoyed a little taste of summer wine. When you see it next on TV, now you'll sound ready, go up them steps. Side it, castle like the peas. Enjoy the rest of the day around here. And have a safe journey home. Now just mind your head.